just get things started, or should we wait to check if everything is working correctly?
Depends on the audience. I'm just waiting for the audience to be there.
Yeah, let's see if there's any feedback, if everything is working as it should.
We're missing Tickle.
Yeah, Tickle should be made a speaker. Yeah.
I'm in now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. Great, Tickle. Nice to hear. Good to have some more females into these panels. That's great. Always. And especially
everyone.
And Sai, you can hear us? Your audio working?
Yep. I can hear you.
Okay. Jesus, this is working too well.
We're missing Whoop, I think.
Yeah, Whoop was just in here. Yeah, he's here.
Meow,
Whoop, can you hear us?
check. Meow, meow. Meow, meow,
Meow,
meow.
meow. Oh, nice, Whoop. Great. Then I think
Whoop, can we do some more smack talk?
What did you say, Wonky?
I just want to do more smack talk. Last time it was great.
Your audio is breaking a bit up, Wonky. It's wonky, we can say.
Yes.
Repeat what you said.
I just wondered if me and Whoop could do some more smack talk, because last time it was
I don't
was
think
good.
I'm not sure if we have smack talk on the agenda, but I guess we can do it at the end, right? We gotta keep to the agenda. Okay, guys. I think we should just get going. I think we have a pretty great event this time. For those who have seen the topics, it's about reinforcing, and we should have a pretty good panel today. We are missing a few persons that I would like to have, but you know, real life and all of that. So I think we just should get going. First thing, I mean, some may know us, some may not know us. We can do a quick introduction of the panel, and then we'll get on to the topics. We have divided this event up into kind of 4 main topics. The first one is more basic, right, about how, why, and how reinforcements work and how they don't work. I think we should keep that topic in the basics because from the audience, I'm sure we have both skilled players and new players. So let's try and keep topic number 1 kind of in the basics, I guess. And I hope X-Wing and can lead in on that if we have the time. And then we have the second topic that is more about the specifics of reigns. I mean, what type of reigns, full reigns, counter reigns, field reigns, everything related to that subject. And then we have, I'm very happy we have Whoop here from PPK Alliance. He's going to talk a bit about pre-reigning and reigning in practice, and I think it should be a great topic. They are known for their very good reinforcement strategy in Battlefield and else. So happy to have Whoop doing leading on that topic. And the last one, we have a bit about buffs and what works where and what generals and so on works for what buildings, keeps and those things. So let's just get going, I guess. My name is Caesar. I'm from server 806, continent 4. Yeah, I guess we're a middle of the pack alliance, 270 billion alliance. Yeah, I think we finished Shalloon's 61th spot or something like that. I mean, nothing great, but we're in there someplace. And then I guess we can do a quick round for the rest of the panel. Wonky, you can start, and then we just go from there.
Okay, hi, I'm Wonky. I'm C5. I'm in a 200 bill alliance, so I'm a K44. Also play a little bit in C1 as well, but not very often. Next one.
Yeah, I'll keep it going. I'm X-Wing from server 289 in C1. We are an 800 bill alliance.
I'm Tickle. I'm on 388, so C2. I'm K44 and K41. And our alliance is about 230 billion.
Yeah, I'm Whoop from C5 PPK. I'm a K45.
Hi, this is Sai. I'm from 704. I think the last time I was on a panel was a monsters discussion. I'm in, I think, 221 billion alliance, and right now I'm K41.
Excellent, guys. I think that was all of us. Just a quick thing before we get going on the main topics for our excellent audience. Please try to keep your questions on the topic we are discussing, and raise your hand if you want to ask a question. We'll bring you on stage. You can ask questions on audio. If you want to do that, that's great. We can discuss a few things. You can just raise your hands, and I'll try and keep track of questions in the chat. Trying to keep track of everything there. So with that said, I think let's start on the first basic topics. The basics of reinforcements and why they make a difference, and why you have to have a good reinforcement game, I guess, as a good PvP alliance. X-Wing, maybe you can lead us into that topic, talk a little bit about a few things, and then we'll take questions from there.
Yeah, sure. So the obvious answer is you're adding more troops on defense, which is going to help. But the less obvious for players who aren't familiar with, maybe newer players, are the layering and how the battles work. So every troop in your battle will target a specific layer. Generally, it's the high tiers first, but with Siege, it does go out of order a little bit, and there is some discrepancy on how the ground and cav troops fight layers. But either way, adding these additional layers, what they do is you're going to have a turn where the defender gets to attack with all of their troops or move closer to yours or to the attacker's troops, and then the attackers get to go next. So when you add layers, if you have T15 cabs, for example, they're going to attack their specific target, and then the defense or the attacker will then get to respond to that and attack in return. If you have a layer there, let's say 1,000 troops, that huge cav layer that's going to be attacking will waste a turn attacking that one single layer. So when it comes to reinforcements, if you have a bunch of people reinforcing you with a whole bunch of layers, what you're doing is you're soaking up turns of their big tiers, their big layers, from attacking your big layers, and vice versa. You can see this really clearly with Siege, for example. So let's say you've already lost all of your Siege and somebody's attacking you again with Siege. Their Siege will start attacking your ranged. However, if you have Siege reinforcements or any kind of reinforcements, the attacking Siege will then have to attack all of your Siege layers before they can start targeting your range. And that gives you a ton of extra turns to fight back before you lose a bunch of troops. I can pull up some reports in a minute here. I'm just loading my BlueStacks. But the difference, if any of you have been rallied, or if any of you have been in a rally against somebody who has reigns or doesn't have reigns, is massive. You'll see it go from billions down to hundreds of millions in the reports. Obviously, in C5, C6, you might have some smaller teams that aren't putting up billions in their rallies, but still the difference in point exchanges, and that's where it really matters, is the point exchange. So those layers are going to help you earn more points off of the fight versus the opponent. I'm happy to take some questions on that if anyone has any while I pull up my BlueStacks.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's a very good introduction to to have reinforcements works. And yeah, if you could pull up a few reports, I mean, sometimes pictures speak a lot more, or words, or how was it? Pictures speak more than words. Yeah, that's how it was. Wonky, what's your experience on reinforcements? I remember from some time back, I mean, defense game and reinforcement game was kind of weak, but things have changed a lot the past year at least, and I'm seeing at least in All Stars and the bigger battlefields, reinforcements play a really big difference now when you're talking about large rallies too, like when you get 70, 80, or even 100 mil rallies. Like I think also VIG and RSP has talked a bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're a life changer when you're being rallied. I think the thing to remember, just to pull on one of X-Wing's points a little bit, is when you're being rallied, if you have no reinforcements, you've got one keep, so one set of attacking turns, and you're say being rallied with 10 people. They've got 10 attacking turns against you, and you've one attacking turn against them. So even if you outbuff them completely, you attack once, they can attack you 9 more times than you can attack them. So as soon as you add in another one rein, you've effectively halved the amount of times they hit you, assuming that reinforcement's got all the layers. So they're going to hit the reinforcements layers, then they're going to hit yours, or vice versa. So you're just effectively, like as I was saying, wasting the attacking troops' time by putting reinforcements in. And ideally, the reinforcements are doing some killing as well, but we'll cover that in a bit more detail. If you start to add more people in, say you add in 10 reinforcements against a 10-person rally, or say 9 reinforcements plus you against a 10-person rally, the odds have changed completely, and the chances are that rally is going to splat pretty hard because they don't have a numerical advantage on number of turns they can take against you. And then it's just around how quickly can you kill their troops before, while they work through the layers of the reinforcements. So when you scale that up to All Stars, we saw this great reports floating around after the C5 All Stars, everything from huge clears of people with no reinforcements right the way through to 90 mil rallies with 5k buffs hitting someone and doing less than 1 billion damage because they got 110 million reins. So huge part of the game and really important when you start rallying.
Excellent. Did you get your reports ready, X-Wing? We have a few questions from the audience already, so I can get a few of those going if you're still pulling up reports. Oh, yeah, you're already sharing, I see.
Yep. Just give me 1 second. Let me throw the second report in there. And these are from All Stars in C1, which you see the size of the rallies get pretty big. So they're both siege rallies. You notice on the first one, I had 1 march of reinforcements and lost 9.6 billion. And they're both siege attacks. I actually had already lost some of my siege on that first one. Actually, it was troops that I had lost sending into rallies. But the fact that they were able to blow through my siege and kill a bunch of ranged troops due to not having any layers to slow down their siege shows how big of a difference it is, going from 9.6 billion loss down to 587. Obviously the rally size is different. With All Stars there was a lot of lag, but you can see the point exchange. Like, this might not be a good example looking at that second one. Give me a sec. I'll pull up another one where I lost a lot less on a full rally. I have plenty.
Yeah,
but
I think you still, you are still showing a kind of a good example because as you have more reinforcements, the enemy troops have to waste, as you touched on already, they have to waste a lot more turns, wasting their higher tires on the lower tires in the reinforcement. That's one thing. So you get more time, to kill extra turns when you are defending. So there's no doubt about that.
yeah, exactly. And I have a fairly strong keep. It's K44, 2.5 billion power, right? It's not weak at all on defense, but when you're facing rallies like this, the reinforcements are the only way to equalize. Here you'll see another example where Oz rallied me, and this time I did have quite a bit of reins, but not full, and still lost more than we took from them, right? Versus the first one when I had very little reins and lost 9 billion power. It's just such a huge difference. You have to have reinforcements, just like I think it was Wonky or Whoop. Someone said, if you don't have the reins, you need to move. You shouldn't be taking those rallies, unless you're one of those mega whale keeps that likes to take them. Definitely get out of the way of something like this if you don't have enough reins.
Yes, and I think you touched on one of the questions that we have from the audience here, at least kind of, because somebody asked, I think, when do you pull your reinforcements? I think from my perspective is you really don't pull your reinforcements unless you have time to switch them for something better. If that's, what do you guys think? Do you ever you don't pull your reinforcements usually in a battle?
I've got a whole load of conversation about that in my section, because it's the mechanics of doing reinforcement. Just the most simple perspective. The most important thing is your reinforcements and keep. It doesn't, when it comes down to detail you spend and so on. If they're not there, there's like, you lost it already. So the most important thing is that they're there, and then everything after that stems from, well, what do I send? Will it survive more than one hit? What's it designed to do? How will it help? And do I have time to switch it out? And that's really situational, because in something like an alliance, BOC, whatever, you can switch it out usually, unless you're playing at the top levels. If you're playing something like All-Stars or a pretty busy challenge match, you don't have time to switch it out. So you need to plan ahead. What kind of game am I playing? What reins am I putting in? If I can switch them out, I'll put different stuff in. If I can't switch them out, I need to approach it differently. So we can cover that in a bit more detail a bit later.
Yeah, we have we can do that in more detail later. And as a follow-up, I think to this question, we might as well touch quickly on who you should reinforce and who you should not reinforce. Let's not get into the details there, but I mean, obviously you don't reinforce players that are ghosting. Obviously, those never need reinforcements. And then you have trap keeps. They are often built a bit different than bigger keeps. So I think you have to know your alliance and your players to know what reins work. We're going to get a bit more into detail of it, but we can do the basics of it. I think if you have anybody is being rallied in a battlefield, whether there's a trap, a medium-sized keep, or a bigger keep, I think you should always send reinforcements. At least that's how we usually play the game. Appreciate any other input from the rest of you guys, how you do that.
It comes down to experience. You really have to know your team and yourself, right? Like if you're going to be fast enough to pull and resend. If you know your teammate is poor at calling out incoming rallies and they're being targeted heavily, you may leave them in or at least quickly refresh them. But if you are the size where you might be targeted, then it's a good idea to take the rally and pull them back so that you're able to get out of the way of a rally on yourself.
And for our battles too, we communicate when we're pulling reins, so only one person is pulling at a time, so that defending keep that we feel is weaker is not more open to losing more points.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think that's a bit how we do it also in Battlefield. And We also do have a few keeps as usual that are a bit squishy, and those we usually tell to port away from rallies because reinforcements in weak buffed keeps are usually not that great. I mean, if they can't port, we have to. It's better to reinforce them, I guess, because the power exchange is at least better than with no reinforcements. How do you guys do this when you have keeps of smaller sizes that are a bit iffy?
For us, they're the ones we pre and reinforce at the beginning. So if we've got a couple of keeps that we know are pretty easy prey, we'll typically make sure we've got at least one, maybe two reins in them. And we do the same for smaller keeps as well. So, you know, when you go into a battlefield and you're like looking around for some nice targets and you see like a 4-bill K39 or something like that, they're the first that are going to get splattered because they're easy points for a full team in some ways. So we just fill them with reins. So, you know, get a nice surprise at the beginning. But yeah, the squishy ones, you just get the points. You know, they're going to die anyway. You might as well get the points out of them and get as many points for the team. So, you know, reins dying is a fact of life. You know, we shouldn't get too attached to reinforcements. They're going to die. So I wouldn't stress too much about it.
Yeah, so basically you guys just think that it's better to just reinforce those more squishy keeps and at least get the points instead of they just being, you know, killed by one rally. Yeah, makes sense.
I think for the 200 bill alliances, that's the strategy. For us, it's a little different. We fight different teams, right? Luckily, all of our keeps are built to be able to handle solo attacks. But if they get rallied, one of our weak keeps, we're not taking rallies on that castle. They're supposed to get out of the way.
So guys, I'm just curious because you already mentioned I think a bit of it. I mean, like I'm from I guess a smaller alliance, and some of you are from bigger alliances. I mean, I think for smaller alliances, it's reinforcement game is at least as important as in bigger, or would you say there's any difference between being a big or a small alliance in that regard?
I would say here it depends on how you're defining big and small alliances. I have seen very big alliances with very weak buffs. Those should not be big alliances. We are 220 billion, but we consider ourselves very small because a lot of our players are not capable enough of handling big rallies even with reins. They go negative. What we usually do, for which X-Wing just said, that people do still share their reports. So we try to identify what needs to change, and if they're capable of handling rallies, that's when we start training them. Otherwise, we keep promoting the same thing, that port out of it. Because at the end of the day, it's the point exchange that matters. So definitely, I would not call it as a big small, but instead buff and the gameplay that the players are doing.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I think at least for us, we are typically a lot of K40s, and then we are a few K42s and a K43. I mean, when it comes to reinforcements, we have limited marches, so we usually reinforce the smaller ones first, and because usually in a battle, the smaller, the weaker ones will be targets first, right? For rallies, and the bigger ones will usually be saved a bit in the later game. At least that's how it works for a medium-sized alliance. I don't know how you other guys have are used to a lot of more K44s and that stuff. How you do those things?
Yeah, we've got 3 K45s and I think like 5 K44s now. And we sometimes, depending on who we fight, will pre-rain. But most of our battles, we are reactive raining. The smaller keeps that are, we're talking like a 20 billion power keep or below, we don't typically rain them because the exchange is going to go poorly. Their embassy is just not big enough for the rally they're going to be taking. But anytime you are going to take a hit, you would rather take it with reins than without. So if they say if we're out of teleports and a smaller keep is sitting, we're going to rain it.
Yeah, and I think that's also a good opportunity to say just, I mean, what's a small keep and what's a big keep? I think that's defined by what type of team you are and what you are facing, right? Because you can be a 15 billion K42 and be the biggest, some of the biggest one in your team, right? And because your power is kind of lower in total, and then you have, as you say, if you have multiple K45s obviously and K44s, small is there 20 billion, where that would be big in our alliance, right? So it's a definition, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me a bit better now? Sorry, I realised I was breaking up, so I've moved networks. See if that's any better.
Yeah, you sound a lot better, Wonky. You don't break
Okay.
up. So we're still on the topic of the basics here. So we have a few questions I could also bring up. I see somebody is asking what is the difference between a full reinforcement, a counter reinforcement, and a fill reinforcement. I can say something.
I've got a whole load set up on that topic.
Yeah.
Do you want me to? Shall I work through it
can-
and then we just do some questions for that, or how do you want to do it?
We could just do the short answer and then we'll get more into depth, I think, in the next topic,
Okay.
right?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
So at least how we define a full rain, that's basically your full march, right? Your best march with high tires. That's a full reinforcement. You send all the power you can. And in a counter reinforcement, that's typically when if you know that somebody is being, say, targeted with archers, you will send ground full reinforcements. That's a counter reinforcement. And a fill reinforcement, that's usually something we, at least our alliance, uses when maybe our ground march is away or our archer march is away. Many of us don't have multiple marches, so then we just have one preset that's full of 10k layers. That's it. We use it to heal and we use it to reinforce. Because even layers of 10k in a keep, even though you don't have big tires there, will still waste enemy turns, right? So I think that's also, I think field reinforcements also have a big role in a battlefield. And if you have smaller players too, I think field reins is also a good idea. But I think we get to it, Wonky, right? Soon.
Yeah.
So I think we have touched on the main topics. I think for the basics of reinforcements. I see some of the questions coming are more into the detailed stuff. So I guess unless there's anything in particular from you guys, we can move on to the second topic, that is what we were just discussing. Fill reins, full reins, counter reins, when to use what, and what is the pros and cons of the different type of reinforcements. Wonky, I'll let you take the word on this one, and also try to keep smaller keeps and alliances also, not only for the big. Yeah, thank you.
So one of the things we talk about a lot is rallying, but we haven't really talked about solos. So I think it's important to say that reinforcements are very effective when you're being soloed as well. So if you've got a smaller keep that looks like a nice solo target for a K44, for example, some reins can change that battle very, very heavily. Anyway, that's a side note. So let's just quickly talk about what size of keep. So this is all age and stage related. You know, as we just said, big stuff, big battles like X-Wing fights are completely different to, say, one of my small C5 alliances. So the first thing is, can the keep that you're reinforcing, can it actually defend? Because if it's got terrible debuffs and terrible buffs, you're just going to lose everything. So the things you need to think about there are debuffs, really important for defending. There's the reinforcers. If you've got a high tier reinforcer with good debuffs, their debuffs actually work on the reinforcing keep. This sounds like one of those crazy Evony report glitches, but quite a few of us have tested this, and whoever has the highest debuffs when they send reinforcements, those debuffs.
Oh no, did we lose Wonky?
Yeah, I thought I lost my internet. Glad to know it's not more.
Maybe Wonky pushed the wrong button. Who knows? He was in the
Maybe
middle
he's
of a
walking.
sentence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if we get Wonky back. His audio, at least for me, his audio disappeared. And for you too, Sai?
Yep.
Yep.
I miss Wonky.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe you can just follow up a bit on what Wonky was introducing us to. He's coming back, I'm sure.
What he was in the mechanics part of it?
Well, yeah, a bit about what reins to use in what kind of scenarios. I think we were quite away on that road, getting more into the details, I guess, of the different reinforcement strategies.
Yeah, he was touching on the debuffs coming from the reinforcer.
Yeah, and I think we should wait a bit about the buffs part because I think that's the last part.
Yeah. Oh. What'd you do, Anya?
Hello, guys. Can you hear us? Mic test.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's see. Okay, we start to get people back in here. Yeah, X-Wing, before we got interrupted, I think we will try. Yeah, and Wonky, I think Wonky should probably also be getting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Brilliant.
At least I can. Okay, Wonky, you were in the kind of in the middle of introducing. Just remember, Wonky, let's keep the buffs part and what works and what
Sure, no
not
worries.
works to the latest topic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason for just talking about those is because it's a factor in who you reinforce. You don't want to reinforce a keep that you're just going to die on horribly. So somebody who doesn't know about PvP, for example, in your alliance, if they drop in SBS, it's just that they're hiding to nothing. So, who do you reinforce? So there's a few different types of keep. Somebody mentioned ghosting already. Don't, unless you've got sky high buffs like Small PP, who's just got a lovely report there. You don't really want to reinforce a ghosting keep. I mean, you can do. I mean, we've got a couple of entertaining reports from All Stars where we rallied a keep that said it had 10 billion power, had nothing apart from a load of reins. So it happens, but you don't usually choose to do that. And then you've got typically the next step up is like a T1 trap keep, and then you've got the sort of the bigger, more sort of more rounded keeps where they're more focused on all troop types, and then from there it goes up to the much bigger, much stronger keeps. So I'll start with the T1 stuff and work from there. So we typically reinforce T1 cav keeps with range troops, and I know that other people have different opinions on ground and so on, but for us and the way we play with it, they typically die to cav or range troops. So against cav, if you put ground in, for example, and you get caved, you're going to lose all your Ians and you might lose the keep as well. But if you put range troops in, they're going to do an okay job against range. They're not going to do as good against ground, but they'll be effective. And if you get calves, then you're going to be giggling away at that report. So they're quite versatile. And then the other nice thing about calves is that usually they're the first PvP march that people build. So they usually got, they've got range troops floating around. They might even have a range general that they've upgraded. I mean, the classic is Minamoto, who reinforces. I think we're going to talk about generals a bit later, so we'll go through those then. But range troops work well because generally everybody's got them. When you move up to the bigger keeps, then you start looking at what people are rallying you with, and it starts to become a bit more important. And I think this is again quite situational and quite age and stage related. So you can typically try and send the counter march, which is, as Sar was saying earlier, if someone sends range, you send ground. If someone sends siege, you send siege or cav. We can talk about that one later in detail, and so on. Or you can send a mixed march that will kind of do everything. Or you can break it down and send, a two-part march that does some of it. And it really depends on the situation. So in All Stars, for example, you don't want to be trying to change out reinforcements after every hit. It's just not going to work. I mean, if they work in the first place, you're doing well. So you might as well take all the, just try and make your life as simple as possible. So that's where a mixed march comes in. So someone like Dimitri gives generic buffs for reinforcing, or you can just take the view that you're going to send layers, just big layers of stuff. Like say you send 100k of your top of T11 up, for example, and the rest of it's like layers. Is it going to be as effective as a properly built counter reinforcement? No, not at all. But will it work? Yes. And will it work against the next rally? Yes. Will it work against the next rally? Mostly, because most of it will still be alive, or some of it will still be alive. So there's a balancing act. And a lot of that depends on how strong the keep is that you're reinforcing. If it's got good attacking buffs, like good attack buffs on the wall, then it's going to do a decent amount of killing. If it's got a lot of troops that can get out there, say, it's a solid keep, mixed reinforcements are going to be effective. If it's a weak keep, then that's when you want to think about sending stuff to do more killing than just soaking up hits. But this is probably more around alliance-based fighting than the bigger stuff like Challenge and All Stars. So the thing we like to do, if you've got lower tier keeps or smaller keeps that aren't really solid PvP players, get them to send layers. And in some ways, the generals don't matter. The layers are just there to die. They're there to waste time. Buffs are irrelevant. Just send layers. It doesn't matter. You don't need to build generals. You can just send anything you want to level up, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just layers. Everybody can build layers. Ideally, they got to T14. If they don't, it doesn't really matter. You've got them there. They're still going to be useful. And it means that everybody can start to get involved.
Yeah, I think you have a great point there regarding fill reigns, Wonky, because at least for smaller alliances or alliances that are just getting into, battlefield or, server wars and have small keeps or maybe some trap keeps. I mean, at least in my experience, I think field reigns, like if you just have a preset with 10k layers, or you can have a preset with 2k layers, and if you manage to get those stuffed into a trap keep, it makes the point exchange if that trap keep gets solo attacked by a big player. I mean, first of all, you don't have to worry about what is this player going to get hit with, at least in SVS. You can just send that fill reign to the keep, And then you can send a lot of fill reins, because if you send full marches to a smaller trap keep, they might have problems with, embassy size. Maybe might just have 10 or 15 million troop capacity, right? So stuffing traps with fill reins, I think that's a great strategy, at least in some cases. I'm not sure what the rest of you guys do with those.
We typically do not do fill reins. We're able to fill enough for the rallies that we're receiving to take them out pretty easily. But for the smaller alliances, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, because I think, Tickle, there's a difference. I think also this is probably a point that there's a difference between where you have a very big alliance with a lot of K44s and stuff like that in a heavy, all stars or Chaloons fight. But I mean, in server war, for example, if you have small traps that are kind of low on reinforcement, but they have decent debuffs and buffs for their meat shield, I think field reins can be an excellent way to do it. And I mean, also the good thing about field reins is that if you get hit, if the trap gets hit, by some crazy cav march from a K44, right, with 4K buffs, you don't, at least the reins doesn't lose a lot of points either, right? So it's kind of, it's kind of a thing you have to maybe feel in the situation.
Yeah, it's a good insurance policy. I just like getting players who aren't really PvP players involved, and fill reins is a really nice way to do that, because they can get some points in SPS. They can be part of the battle. Whereas if they're dropping bubble themselves, the chances are they're going to be burning in 20 seconds after Ice Scouts found them. So it's another mechanism to help players who like the idea of PvP or dabble in it, just to get a bit more involved. And I think that's a bit of a tangent, but it's something that I think a lot of alliances have a lot of members who see PvP players and kind of want to do it, but maybe don't feel they're ready or don't know how to start without embarrassing themselves or whatever. It's just a nice way to get involved.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a good thing for smaller alliances that are just getting into, as you say, wonky PvP, and you don't risk much. I mean, if you send a march with 2K layers, you don't risk that much, right? Okay, if you lose it, you lose it. It's not much. But I mean, the great thing, as you say, also that you don't have to have any generals for a field reinforcement. You can just send, actually, as you say, you can just send the troops without the general, because they are just there to waste the turns of the enemy, so that the trap keep can actually hit the higher tires, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it means you can break reins up into two categories, which is the stuff that you're just sending to die, then it's going to help, or the stuff that you're sending that's actually going to do some killing as well. So, and that's probably where everybody's more focused, because everybody likes to have a march built that's that's going to do something and get some kills and look nice on a defense report. And it's more fun that way. Obviously, it's way more fun building a march than it is just sending some layers.
Yeah, and I think also that's a tip to players that are just getting into PvP, is that don't always judge reinforcements by what the reinforcements kill in a report, because with fill reins they won't kill much at all, but they still waste turns for the enemy. So obviously, if you're a bigger player and you want to actually score points and you send a full march, then okay, you know what you're doing, and hopefully you know what you are reigning with. So there's a difference there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm gonna go against the crowd on this one. I would not do fill reins, this 10K layer only thing with no generals. If somebody sent that to my keep, I would kill them. Here's why. You only have a certain number of presets, and I use 6. You have 6 presets because the vast majority of our alliance at their VIP level have 6 presets. To dedicate one of 6 to a 10K layer march seems like a total misuse of resources. What I would do instead is an archer reinforcing march, which functions very similarly to a fill rein march, but is full of archers with archer generals, and it still has the safety net of not having a lot of downside risk unless the keep you're reading gets zeroed, because archers are basically the last troop type to ever get attacked, unless they send some mega siege rally that burns through all archers, which is, you shouldn't be reinforcing a keep that's a possibility on, I would think, in the first hit. But I would make it a secondary archer march, which, in my opinion.
Interesting, Whoop. But I mean, are you looking at this from a perspective of like a K43, a K44 that's like 20 or 30 billion power? Or are you looking at this into a much smaller alliance with a lot of smaller keeps with a lot of less buffs? Because the problem is that if you reinforce a smaller keep with a badly buffed march and you get hit by something bigger like in SVS, that's gonna hurt a bit, right? So I'm just curious how you look at it.
Yeah, I was going to go in my section about the pre-rain kind of allocation into how I would determine that.
Yeah, okay.
That's just my fill on. I didn't want to like jump over that. I just wanted to give, that's my opinion on the Filrine. I feel like it's a wasted opportunity to develop a secondary archer march. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's why we are having these panels. I think it's great to have different when it comes to some of this stuff, and I think sometimes it's difficult to see the point of view from, I mean, how you are fighting, because there's so much difference between a just started PvP alliance to like a big, really good PvP alliance. It's so much ground there, so probably difficult to say.
I mean, as soon as you get to a certain point, I think, and you start fighting at a certain level, a Phil Rians isn't actually going to be that great. You'd much rather send something that will do the killing. But for a lot of people that play in your alliance, for example, not all of them have that. So I'd much rather have a Phil Rian than a really badly buffed Archer Rian, for example, or whatever, taking up loads of space in my embassy so that other people with better marches can't get in. So
yeah, and that's I think that's fair to say also, because my experience is I have a few times where I haven't gotten any good rains, but I like got maybe 2 or 3 fill rains from some K35s in Battlefield, and I still do way better on my defense than having none at all, right? So that's maybe a bit of the point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an opposing viewpoint to that, though.
Sorry?
Go ahead, Sai.
I was just going to add one extra point. I know we are having difference of opinions. I would say I'm 60% to 60 to 70% on the fill rain side. I'll just add one more reason why we do field rains and why sometimes I send field rains. It's mostly, if I'm doing that during SVS, it's mostly to help someone get wings. Because if I send my full march inside a keep of someone who's trying for wings, they might not get enough kills because my troops might be killing everything. But I still want them to have the safety cushion of having extra turns. So we just fill them with field rents, just 10k, maybe 1k, so that their keep does the most killing, they survive, and they get enough score for maybe top 3, top 5. So I just wanted to add that. I would never send field rains in battlefields, but that's mostly because I'm in a different. I'm K41 now, so I would not be sending that. But in SVS, I do send that to people who are trying to get wings. I just wanted to add that it does help in those scenarios.
Yeah, it stops you stealing points.
Yeah, I think it absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
Well, let me just quickly clarify. So in the real world, what I have for reinforcements most of the time, what I send, I've got 2 archer reinforcement marches and 2 siege reinforcement marches. So, this isn't a sort of 200 bill alliance. I'm a K44, etc. So I like to send range. It's generic. It generally does pretty well against everything, providing that the defending keeper's got layers alive. And siege, I generally only send to keeps that have a siege defense. Let me just quickly take you through something I do that might be applicable to some other people here. So if you're a K40 plus and you've got T15 siege, and you've got say a KP that doesn't have T15 siege, but it has enough siege that someone wants to siege rally it. What I tend to do is I send quite a heavy layer of T15s in my reinforcements. And what that does is that means they're going to get targeted first out of everybody else's troops, because only a couple of us in the alliance have T15 siege. And so they're going to get hit first, and that gives everybody else more time to live, so their siege can hit back before it dies. Now it's quite applicable to, it's quite situational, but it means that I take more of a hit, sure, fine, whatever, but it means that the keep that's being hit will survive and be a bit stronger. And yeah, I just saw a question there about what siege is. Top tier, big siege is by far the best. Some people look at reports and say, well, but small siege killed more. It's like, well, yeah, small siege kills more because it kills stuff you don't care about in a siege rally so much. It kills like T4 siege layers, whatever. You want big siege to be killing big siege, and that's what it's going to target first. And it's got the longer range, so you just want to be putting big siege reins in, is my view.
And Wonky, while you're on that exact topic, we had a question a bit earlier from blasting off again. He's asking about rain during a siege rally when the defensive siege is dead. What is the ideal rain to send? Siege rain to help buy the defending archers time, or cav rains, or what?
Okay. This is a fun subject. If your siege buffs are shit, don't send siege. Now the thing about because you're just going to lose them basically. You're just going to give points away. Now, if the best way to explain this, if you're being siege rallied, there's two outcomes. Okay, you're going to either lose all your siege, and then your ground and your cav are going to kill the incoming siege or the rest of it, or your siege are going to kill all the incoming siege, and they'll do it before the ground and cav get to the attacking siege. So everybody says, "Oh, send cav to range siege rallies." Well, it depends. Quite a lot of the time, if your siege kill the attacking siege, they're going to sit around and do nothing, and it's just their layers that are going to be useful, wasting time. So I would advocate, if you've got good siege buffs, send big siege to a siege rally. If you haven't got good siege buffs, then you could send cav, but cav are a complete liability, I think, for reins most of the time. So I would be inclined just to send layers or a range march ready for whatever happens next, because as long as there's layers there, your layers are going to be useful.
Yeah, and Wonky, I think as a follow-up to that, it was also a question of, I think it lacks a bit of context, but does it help to hide top layers of siege? I think
No,
that would
absolutely
depend.
not.
No,
It really doesn't.
I mean,
so the thing you need to understand that is you need to go and look at the points to power conversion for SBS and Battlefield. Middle tier siege is worth way more than top tier siege. It's way more points efficient to kill for you as a defender to lose your top tier siege than it is to lose your mid tier siege. Because everybody looks at the power exchange and goes, "Oh, but I lost less power," but actually you lose a lot more points. Like it's a 2-to-1 ratio, sometimes 2.5-to-1. So you want to be you're much better if you're going to lose stuff. Lose the stuff that's the most efficient to lose. So my view would be, yeah, don't ghost your top tier siege. If I'm in SBS and I see somebody who's ghosted their top tier siege, I am laughing because that's just point bonanza.
yeah, and I think the only exception to hiding your siege would be if you're a badly buffed keep that has build siege by an arrow. If you have built a lot of T12, T13s, and
Don't unbubble.
T14s, and and you don't have the buffs to support the siege, yes, absolutely, you should hide those sieges. Yeah.
We refer to those as an all-you-can-eat buffet because you can't defend them.
Yeah, and I know there are people who really wants to build siege defense keeps because they have heard that the bigger players are doing that, and they start building their sieges long before they have both the buffs and the debuffs to actually support them. So that's a big no-no. Do not build, and if you're a trap, absolutely no. Do not build bigger layers of siege.
Yeah. But we're fixating a bit on siege now, so let's focus on other stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
One of the questions that always comes up is, what would I do if someone sets 3 or 4 rallies on me at a time? What rains do I send? And the answer there is, well, in my view, it would be ranged or a mixed rein. So Tickle, I think, is a big fan of the mix. I think Tickle uses that a lot in her alliance. We typically send range. A few people send ground. I'm a bit, I don't know. I've never had a strong ground march, so I've never really focused on ground, and I don't like it as reins because cabs just muller it completely. So I'd rather compromise on and send range because it's just a great all-round troop. But it's a good point for Tickle to raise because she's way more experienced in mixed reins.
Yeah, we use quite a bit of mixed rain. We've got 3 K44s in the alliance, and typically about 12 active players in Battlefield. So it's a large amount that have 8 marches, 8 presets with good buffs. I mean, we're all pushing about 4,000% for most of the marches. So we will use mixed rain, especially for pre-rain, because we don't know if those smaller players, the 6 billion, the 3 billion, if they'll get hit with range or cav. And that just kind of covers our butt, especially for solos.
Yeah.
And then same thing for buildings. If we're just going to be sitting in a building or taking a mine that the opponent that we have is just not going to be able to take it back, mixed rain works great, especially against solos.
Yeah. So one thing we did in some of the All Stars teams I was in this time around was we got people to build a mixed ranged and ground rein march, and that's kind of a send and forget to keeps that aren't going to be sieged, because the range will be useful against ranged and cav and ground to an extent, assuming the meat wall stays alive. And ground will do great against the range, and at that point, it's kind of toast when the cav hits it. So, it's sort of a halfway house, but it's in a situation where you can't swap them out, and you don't know what's coming, but you can pretty much guarantee it's not siege. They work pretty well. And again, it's a sort of a secondary benefit, but trying to minimize the amount of work a player has to do in Battlefield is actually a really important thing, because if everybody's trying to move marches around all the time, they're going to make a mess. The more things you ask someone to do in a short period of time, the more likely they just go wrong. So, that side of things, yes, it's not about buffs and it's not about, the mechanics of it, but it's a really practical thing that alliances need to sort of think through when they do reinforces. Keep it simple.
One thing to think about too when you are reinforcing someone, if your buffs are really low compared to who is hitting, you're not going to do much. So you want to make sure that you're sending a well buffed march if it's a full march, not something that's halfway done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Tickle, that might bring us back to the point about field rain. I mean, if you're a K36 or K37 trying to reinforce a K42, maybe it's just better that you send a field rain, right? And instead of just a big march that's going to die anyhow. It might be a point at least.
Yeah, I could see that being a good use for those lower buff players for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, also as Wonky was touching, if you don't have a great number of troops or you don't have a great number of preset and generals, I mean, if you send a field rain, it's going to waste enemy turns, and you're not going to lose that much. So that's a point, I think. And while we were discussing this, I think we have another question I could bring to the panel. I think it's a pretty good question because it's something I see being asked a lot in different discords, and that is, about reinforcements. When you're in the middle of a battle, I mean, how can you know what are they going to send when they set up 4 rallies with 4 different troop types, right? When you see a keep getting really rallied with archers, ground, siege, all of it. I mean, how are you going to know what they are going to hit with first? I think you guys can lead us in on that question. I just wanted to add that you have to know a bit of the mechanics and the keep that is being attacked to see what march is going to go first or second. How are you guys doing this if you have multiple rallies set on a keep?
Well, the first question to ask yourself is, do I really want to sit for 4 rallies?
Yeah, obviously that's going to be the first question. Or maybe you just take the first and then you port. That's also a strategy, I guess. But what are you going to send to your teammate? I mean, let's say he can't port, he has marches out or marches stuck or whatever. I mean,
Siege.
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 always siege. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think you have to know the keep, because if it's a 5 billion keep with no siege in it, and maybe it's cav heavy, who knows, then the archers might get sent first. You have to kind of also know the keep that is being rallied a bit, I think.
But if they're
Yeah,
5 billion,
yeah,
they
I
won't be
mean-
surviving 4 rallies anyways.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's too many variables in that. I would assume that this scenario is the keep being quad set on is at full power, and you know what it is, right? And that they are big enough to require 4 rallies. So they aren't 3 billion, right? They're probably 10, 12 at least plus, right? If that's the scenario, I would send siege. The reason for that is because the sequence of the quad is important. They're going to send siege first, then archer, then cav, then ground, right? The way to disrupt the entire quad is to win the first battle, win the siege battle, and then their archers are going to go terrible. And when their archers go terrible, then their cavs are going to go terrible. And so you really want to win up front so that the subsequent rallies get disrupted, because the rally before it didn't do the thing it was supposed to do. Does that make sense?
And to add to that, if their siege goes well, it's going to clear the archers, right? You're going to start losing archers, which is going to, it's like a waterfall effect to the rest of the rallies. Siege is the most critical to survive. And don't forget that the defender siege attacks first. So even if you have weaker buffs, when you reinforce with siege, you still get to take a shot at the attacking siege when you're on defense or reigning, which means you can weaken their rally. Even if you lose the point exchange, that full clear is going to be worth losing the point exchange on a couple of rallies to survive getting full cleared. So yeah, siege, winning the siege fight is the most important, aside from getting full cleared.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I'm not sure if we're going. I think Khalid wants to speak. He's on the stage. I'm not sure, Khalid, if you want to sing or what you wanted to do. Please speak. Oh, he left. I think he wanted to share something related to taking, having reinforcements or taking defenses. While we were on the topic. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he's now a speaker.
Hello?
Come on, Khalid. Hey, buddy.
Okay, just wait a second. I'm trying to find the report.
Okay, no worries.
This All Stars, I keep reinforcing people, too many people. But there was one report was amazing that there was a siege rally with me. It was full power, and the rally was like 105 million, 110, like something like that.
Yeah, these are
And
gonna be big ones.
I didn't
guess,
lose any
Khalid.
power, by the way. I didn't lose any power.
Yeah, and
Okay,
while
but
you're on the topic, Khalid, I also saw when you guys rallied down
but my
the Neo.
reinforcement,
Yeah.
yeah, my reinforcement was 120 million troops. I think like 90 million of them died. I'm trying to find the report.
90 million died. 90 million troops. Okay, that's a pretty.
Yes,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't say your rallies and defenses are the average in the Evony community. That's for sure. I mean, you guys do have the biggest reigns and the biggest rallies. So,
yeah, it's also All Stars final. So let me
but I
try
mean,
to share it.
I think I saw Viper. I think Viper also was talking about it when you guys met Neo in SVS. The big difference between when Neo had just some crappy field reigns and when he had none. I think Viper also was touching on the subject that there's a big difference between having just a little reinforcement and no reinforcements at all. So I think that's also I think important for people to remember. It's better to send something than nothing.
Yes, that's true. Okay, I found the report.
And while
No.
Khalid is looking for the report, I know there's questions in the audience about what is
Yes,
shite
thank you.
buffs and what is good buffs, but we'll get to that in the fourth topic. That's all about buffs, what works and what do not work. We can touch a bit on what is good and bad buffs because that will depend very much on what continent you are, what alliance you are, what power your alliance is, what keeps you have, and what you are facing. So I think we can touch a bit on that subject later. Yeah. And I'm looking to see if there's any more questions related to reinforcements here. Yeah, there's a few about buffs, what is good and what is bad buffs. Hopefully we can get a bit more into those details.
I think somebody's stirring in the comments.
Yeah, maybe. I can't understand who that might be.
No.
There was one question that was kind of on technical, the way calves interact with range. So if you're getting attacked, if you're raining with calves, do the enemy attackers have to target the raining calves first or the keep first? And that was asked earlier. I'm trying to find the question, but it's not
Yeah, I
jumping
think
to it.
I think hold on. I think there were some questions here related to some specifics about Cav. I'm trying to find it here. Let's see. Maybe it's gone.
I just bumped it.
Hold on. Yeah, if a player reigns with 1000 T15 mounted, does the range have to attack those 5 rain 5 times to get through, or are they all added together and it only takes 1 turn? Okay, then I think that's a question when that's more of the details in the battle mechanics, I guess. We might touch a bit on that. Is there any of you guys that wants to discuss how battle turns works in Evony? I think we touched on it when we was on topic 1, but I mean, I think the main thing you have to understand in Evony is that if you attack or if you defend, one layer can only attack one other layer per turn, right? And then you have to wait for the next turn and so on. Any of you guys want to detail a bit more about those mechanics?
On that one specifically, I was doing some testing on speedbooks, which we're not going to talk about, but I noticed that the defenders, the keeps mounted, will always get attacked first. So if the keep has T15 calves and the attackers send ranged, it doesn't matter what the reinforcements are. The first march in the attacking rally will attack the T15 mounted of the defender's keep and move on. So it depends on the number of reinforcers and the number of joiners in the rally. But for the most part, yeah, you're not going to have your T15 mounted are not going to be safe by having other people reinforce you with their own T15 mounted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite correct. And just to add to that, I think some players might be confused because Ebony is a turn-based game when it comes to battles. So it means that the only way one of your layers can kill one other layer in one turn is that if that layer can one-shot the other layer in one turn of battle, right? So, but if it can't, and usually when you're attacking a big keep, you can't actually usually zero one layer completely and just take counter damage in one turn. You have to do multiple turns, and then you are into. I think this is not the topic either of the event, but that's the battle mechanics and what troops are targeting what troops in what order and so on. I think we should not get into all of those specifics, maybe.
Yeah, let's keep it simple. So I saw
Yeah.
Anya just showed me the questions list, so I saw one in there, which was when do I pull reinforcements? In an ideal world, the keep being rallied or targeted ports away before the last hit, so that you don't get that huge report where you lose way more than you wanted to. In the real world, that's a really difficult one. You know, how do you know when to pull? And the answer is, well, it's completely situational. I don't know what other people do. I prefer people to port away before the last hit, even if they're nearly dead. At least it saves a couple of billions of reins. But
Not this All Stars. They sat for every one of them.
yeah,
Theoretically, I think you're absolutely right, but yeah.
it's so hard to know when the right time to do it is.
Yes, and I think this also depends a lot about what team you have, because like sometimes we ask people to port away straight away when we see they are being hit by 2 or 3 rallies, just port away, and port away more than a few meters from the main rally hive. Port away 50 kilometers. Don't waste ports by just porting away next to another keep in the rally hive. Just port away so that you don't waste ports in a critical time of the battle. Or sometimes we might say that take the first rally and then you port, right? That's, you have to just know the keeps, I think.
Yeah. And you know, if you're being rallied, you should have a pretty fair idea of what your defense can and can't do. And as you
Absolutely.
watch the rally fill up, you know, the sort of the pucker moment of, whoa, okay, I don't really want to take this. When that starts to
Yeah.
go off, you know, that's when taking one might be a good idea, and not, you know, if you're looking at it going, yeah, whatever, then take a couple, have some fun.
And I think we need to move on to the next topic with
Yeah.
Whoop and with pre-reining and reining in practice in a team. But I just wanted to touch onto a question I saw here. Somebody asked if we could go quickly back over about the rein to rein different or the difference between reining someone going for wings versus not. I think what we said and what Sai also made a good point about is that if you're pushing somebody for red wings, I think actually depending on the size and every other parameter in this damn game, but if you fill that keep with fill reins, the defending keep will score more points, and that if you stuff it with high buffed troops, because then the reinforcement will steal a lot of the points for the defense rather than the defending keep. I think this is a good logic. I'm not sure if everybody of you agree, Whoop and Wonky and the rest, and Tickle. There's different strategies obviously for Red Wings, but if you're a smaller keep.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Again, it depends on competition level and what you're doing, and do you actually need to put proper reins into that keep for it to survive? So it's pretty situational. But if you can get away with just layered reins, it definitely helps the keep going for the points.
Yeah,
It'll
and
cost them a lot
yeah,
more in healing. Yeah, it'll cost them
yeah,
more.
and as always, when questions comes up in Evony, it's always difficult, I think, to answer them in a straight way, because there's so many parameters that you have to take into account when you do these things. So it's very situational dependent, I guess we can say, what you should do as a team. But I mean, what you obviously want to do is that you want the Red Wing player to score maximal amount of points at least. So. But it depends, I guess, if you have multiple K44s in your alliance, or if you just have a few K40s and the rest is lower, then the strategy might change. This is why I actually wanted somebody in this event that was kind of good at PvP, but also running a smaller keep, because many of us are running bigger keeps, right, with bigger defenses. So it's a bit of difference, I think, on how you do it. So.
I would say
think,
for that,
yeah, sorry, Tickle.
it's
Go
very
ahead.
it's very dependent on who you're playing against and who your opponent is. If you're trying to get red wings on a smaller player and you're playing a big alliance or one that rallies well, fill reins are not going to do anything. So you need to look at the whole situation, the whole picture, before deciding if fill reins or true reins will be better.
Yes, absolutely, and I think this is the problem sometimes with Evony. It's very difficult to give definitive answers to short questions, as you say, Tickle, because it will be very dependent on where you are as a keep, what defense you have, what alliance you have, and all of this. So and what you're getting hit with, not at least, because if you're getting hit with overbuffed rallies or solos, you're probably not going to do great with the bad buffed reigns. So, but we can get more into the buffs and what are good and what are bad buffs later. I think we should maybe move on, guys, to the next section of the event, unless we are going to spend too much time. I think we covered most of it and the questions that has come up. It's difficult to answer questions that are very specific, guys. When you ask short questions, those are hard to answer unless we know more about your keep and your build. And I think before we move on to VUP and reinforcements in practice, I think one of the feedback at least newer players should do is that try and not ask simple questions. I know it's difficult because we always say we have to know more, about what build are you, what continent are you on, what troops layers do you have in your keep. It's very difficult to answer, I am 6 billion keep, should I train more siege, right? You can't answer that question in a meaningful way. So try and, when you ask a question, either on these types of events or if you are in the Discord channels, try and at least make some of your questions a little more detailed about what type of build you are and what you are trying to achieve. And also, there's a big difference, I think, if you're a small coiner, a free-to-play player, or a bigger coiner. I mean, some things are not meant for small coiners. Some things are not achievable for F2P players. So, you need to make your strategy as a player and as a team on where you are in Evony, kind of, right? Do you have a big spending alliance, small spending alliance? I mean, I think you agree on that, guys. You have to kind of get your head around how everything should work. It can be quite confusing at times. With that, I think, Whoop, you're ready to move on to pre-reigning as in a team in practice, why it is important and how you guys do it in actual battle. How do you guys in practice do this with reinforcements and pre-reinforcements? Please take it away, Whoop.
Sure. Okay. So I can. What I'm going to describe is what we do in PPK. I'm not going to say that this applies or works well for all alliances, but for most of C5, this is what we do in kind of that 260 to 280 power range, where most of our keeps are in the 5 to 9 billion range. So, so what we kind of determine is there's three buckets. There's SVS, there's like Chalans, All-Stars, and then there's like your normal battlefields. I'll just work on like the big Chalans, like All-Stars battlefield ones first, because there's different strategies for those three buckets. For the big matches, we kind of determine, because we know each other's keeps very well, which keeps are defensible. Like which ones have a proper T1 wall, have good debuffs, have good buffs, decent layers, and based on experience in our regular battlefields, we know what a keep can and cannot handle. And so based on that, we'll determine 10 or so keeps that we think are appropriate to pre-reign, that are the most defensible keeps, because our intention is to create positive point exchanges and nothing else. Like the survivability of a keep is not our primary concern in Battlefield. It is an SVS, but not Battlefield. In Battlefield, our primary concern is positive point exchange. So what we'll do is determine the 10 keeps we think will create the best point exchange for us. And then we'll create like an Excel chart of, okay, I'm going to reinforce this keep and so on and so forth. And usually we assign each keep 2 other keeps that they're going to re-reinforce. And I say that based on having 6 preset marches. And so you have the 4 main presets: Brown, Horse, Cav, or Archer's Big Siege. And then typically we'll make preset 5 and 6 2 mixed march reinforcing marches. And we find in PPK the best reinforcing presets that we have are the ones that are the all troop, like 1,000,000 each of your top tiers or something like that. But it has everything in it in high quantities in the high tiers. And so we pre-reinforce with that. The logic behind that is obviously live counter reinforcing is the best strategy. If there's a cav rally on a keep, sending archers is the best thing that you can do. But for pre-rein, we're just trying to fill it with troops to create survivability. So part of our pre-reinforced march is going to be absolutely wrong. Like, we're going to send calves and they're sending archers. But part of our mixed march is going to be absolutely correct. And so we'd rather be a little bit wrong and a little bit right than sending ground into a cav rally. And so that's why we do the mixed march, because in enough quantity, it almost guarantees survivability of the keep that you're reinforcing. And so I don't do the pre-reinforcing chart and kind of mapping out Rex Smash on my team, who's brilliant and really organized and knows everyone's keeps extremely well. He does a lot of those assignments based on what he knows people's needs are. And he does a fantastic job with it. Like, we know that if a keep is susceptible to a cav rally, we want to make sure that they get more archers in than normal. So that's how we do it in practice for the big battlefield matches. And as like the first Chalans match, we'll have 10 based on what we expect rally sizes to be. So if we're expecting to see 65 million size rallies, we'll have 10. If we're expecting to see 85 million rallies, we'll shrink that list down to maybe the top 7 or 6, based on who we think is going to have the positive power exchange. Now, because most of our keeps are not 20 billion plus, they're in that 5 to 9, our intention there is to try to pre-rein them. And then once you get down into like the 4 or 5 billion range, we ask you to like ghost all of your ghost all of your primary marches, and then just take it and die. Lose the 1 billion points or whatever you have left. And now, moving forward, you don't have to worry about being a pinata. Like, you have nothing to give up. And so you don't have to worry about your own defense anymore. But we do ask you to reinforce the keeps that are still alive with the marches that you ghosted. Unghost them and then send them as pre-reinforcement up the ladder, we call it. Like, whoever's still got a lot of power and still alive. And so we use regular battlefields to practice that, because like, you can type that into your chat, but most people are going to be like, okay, and then choke without practice. So a lot of these things that we're going to talk about in this, you should use your regular battlefields that are kind of meaningless to practice, because that's the best use of them, is to get everyone kind of tuned in and making it so that they don't have to think about this stuff anymore. If you do it over and over again, it becomes kind of like second nature. So we don't reinforce trap keeps. Like, if you're a 3 billion trap keep, you should port from rallies, not reinforce. Based on the 6 presets thing, we would never make like a layers only preset, because what I described before, if you only had 6, 4 of them are dedicated to your main marches. And then if you ran small siege, that's 5. That only leaves you with 1 march left. And so I wouldn't use that on 10K layers only. I would make it, if like you're a bigger alliance, I would make that a siege reinforcing march. If you're a medium-sized alliance, like a mixed march, which we use for pre-reens, is the best, in my opinion, because it maximizes the utility of your presets, which I think are a very, very scarce resource and has to be managed properly for everyone to execute. And you want everyone on your team to have the exact same presets. Like, make the 6. These are your 6. Everyone has these 6. That way you can create plans and strategies based on everyone being on the same page. You don't want everyone kind of running random presets, because then they can't participate in some of the things that you're going to do. So that's how we do it in PPK. It's really, you have to get to know each other and read the reports and see what keep can take what and where you're at. And if you're a one tap, we would ask that if you're one of those keeps that you're going to get one tap no matter how much reinforcement you have, we don't reinforce you. What we ask you to do to start the battle is ghost as much as possible, and then just take the rally, or if you can't port, just take the rally, get wiped, whatever's remaining, your 2 billion left, and then now you don't have to worry about defense of your own keep. You can focus on joining rallies and defending other people's keeps. And so we just try to boil it down to make it as simple to execute as possible. The other reason I really like the Mixed March preset is because most of the time it'll be like rally on whoop. And a lot of people that are calling it aren't doing it properly, which is, there is a siege rally on whoop, send me siege. You know what I mean? Like, it's just rally on me, and it's like, well, what is it? I don't know. So instead of sending the wrong thing, just send a mixed thing, which will be kind of wrong, but it'll be kind of right too. And I feel like your outcomes are better with that than trying to like live reinforce in the blind. So that's kind of the strategy in a nutshell.
Excellent, Whoop. I think people should really take note about what you're saying, because you're also in an alliance that are not super big, and you guys are known to be tough to face because you have such a good reigning game. So it's really tough to rally you guys down because you are so organized in how you manage your reinforcements. And I think, as you laid out now, there's a whole lot that goes into this. And my question would be, if you are an aspiring, growing PvP team, I know actually, at least from my own experience with my own team, how do you actually manage to get your battlefield team or PvP team into the same kind of process of thinking? Do you use Excel sheets with your buffs and your keep levels, and who are reinforcing who? Do you keep lists or tables? Do you use your own Discord? I mean, in practice, how do you guys feel is the most effective way to organize your team and get everybody on the same page?
Yep. So we definitely have our own Discord, and it's usually we have a lot of players on the alliance, but there's really about a core 30 that I think would ever join Battlefield. Some of the other ones are social players, or not ready yet, or whatever. And so, because it's the same group of 20 to 30 players, you really get to know each other well. And we kind of describe, it's kind of like the alliance philosophy for growth. Like, try to be ghostable, like as long as you possibly can stand it. It is by far the most efficient way, especially for free to play and low coining players. Being a ghostable keep is by far the most efficient way to play, because defense is a losing proposition most of the time, especially when you're starting out. Like, you really have to have good skill set, a good build, good debuffs. Like, you have to be very well polished to be able to defend yourself. So after ghostable, the next variation we would ask people to build into is like a T1 trap keep. that is designed to go positive on solo attacks, but not rallies at all. Like a T1 trap keep typically can't withstand a rally in the 60 plus million size, no matter how good their build is. So we would ask them to learn to take solos, learn to port from rallies, and that's also a very efficient way to play because T1 are cheap to heal. And then as your tech and buffs grow, then naturally your troop builds are going to grow too. We would ask you to not build out horses or siege until you get to a 6 billion point or something like that. I mean, have them, but don't build 5 million T14 siege as a 3 billion, like as a low powered keep, because they'll get destroyed on the first hit. So, but archers and ground tend to be more survivable because you're going to get hit with a cav rally or a ground rally in that smaller size. You're not going to siege rally a 4 billion keep, right? So you want to build up your defense to be able to take those cav rallies that are most likely coming your way with archers, and because archers are our most common rally, you can join more of them without having to heal. And they're safe. They're the safest reinforcements you can send as an archer rally, because the archers are always the last troop to get hit by any march. They're the most protected. They're also the last to engage, though. And so archer reinforcements tend not to get massive kills unless it's against a cav rally, but against any other rally, if you look at the reports, your archer reinforcements tend to be on the sideline most of the time, unless it's against like a 90 million rally against 80 million reens. That battle lasts so long that your archers end up moving into position to be able to participate. So that's how we think about that. Now, that's for big battlefield matches. In normal battlefields, we are just practicing this. It's just skill practicing. How to recognize that you're being rallied. Can you read it? Can you call the right reactive reens? Can you port in time? We suck at port swapping, but one day we'll practice that. And then calling reens and being able to send live reens is something you just have to practice and practice and practice. And a lot of the BOGs and BOCs are perfect to kind of develop that chemistry. The other part that you really have to do is, it's not just about developing the reinforcing march, it's about recognizing incoming rallies and calling it out. I don't know if this is true for all alliances or most alliances, but in our alliance, probably only half of the team, maybe even less than half, a third of the team will speak, period, will speak or go off mute in a battlefield match. The rest maybe aren't comfortable with it yet, or there's language barriers. And so you need to also practice having the very vocal people watching other people's keeps and calling for them, because they can't call for themselves for multitude of reasons. And that's a skill you have to practice as a team too, because without that, you won't even notice in reinforcements. Like you need to know what's happening on the battlefield and then call it out so that your team can react. And so the first thing to do with that is develop your mixed march ones, and don't even worry about live counter reaning. Just send your one rean preset. Like get into that, get that practice going, and then develop the live counter rean mindset. But that's a skill like level that you have to develop with practice. And so that's battlefield. SVS is totally different. In SVS, we come over in, like, I'll just describe like we're going to try to conquer somebody. We'll come over the big keeps first, the K45s, K44s come over. We might reinforce each other a little bit. And then we bring in kind of the more vulnerable keeps one at a time, and make sure that the bigger keeps fully reinforce them, because we don't want them getting zeroed and then I don't have enough source of life or whatever it is. Like that, those are the events that we're trying to avoid. So we also ask like keeps that are a one tap, no matter what we do, because their embassy isn't big enough, their buffs aren't good enough, please do not join us. Like, do not come over for a conquer. Like, your SVS is better off staying in the hive, unbubbling, and then we'll fill you with like this Filrine or something like that, or fill you with Filrine from a bunch of alts or something to make you a little more survivable. But I don't bring over the one taps for conquering because they will only leave in pain because the other team will know that they are a one tap. They always know. And so we do SBS slowly to make sure everyone is very properly reigned one at a time before we're ready to attack the throne. So
Yeah,
like,
and as you say, Whoop, definitely stakes are a lot higher in SVS. I mean, in Battlefield,
yes.
as you say, in Battlefield you can just waste troops, or you can die, or you can mess up. In SVS, there's more consequences, as you say. So I think that's a good point. That's the same we do actually. We say if we are going to the enemy server to rally, we don't want to bring those squishy K38, K39s into. While they are good to have in the rally, I mean, if they get counter rallied while we are rallying, that's not going to look good. So, and I think that's also about managing expectations in your team, right? Having your roles figured out.
Yeah, I
And
mean, and it's if they're over there and they're reinforcing the throne that you're conquering, they won't be able to get out of the throne and port away in time. Like usually that's got some kind of glitch on it or some kind of weird event. They always get zeroed. Always. They never port away.
yeah, absolutely. And as you say, Whoop, it's far better than to have some of your smaller ghosters just to get over and just ghost and then join the throne, right? Because they can
Yes.
just get attacked and they get port swapped and they go back to home server, they reconfigured and come back and rinse and repeat. But don't bring the squishy keeps into SVS. At least that's probably a very good advice.
Right.
And I think I see this event is dragging on now. I don't know if people are getting tired to hearing all of our talk so far, but I think we have done a few good points here, and with your way of organizing, I think this is a mindset that at least alliances that want to be. Good PvP teams, you have to get organized. You have to, as you say, set up a Discord channel, get a few of your most active PvP players together, organize, set up the team, yellow players, green players, red players that don't, perform in Battlefield, practice in regular Battlefield, all of this. I think this is the mindset you have to have, and it takes time, to build a good alliance that are competitive at a certain level. I think this is sometimes being missed, and I think also Viper has said this countless times before, that actually, I mean, spending time and effort to build a team, that's almost as much work as all of the rest, right?
Yeah. Communication
have
and
to, yeah.
organization is the backbone for success. You have to have it or none of the rest of the stuff will work.
I think this applies to no matter what type of alliance you are. If you are alliance of small players, medium players, big players, you have to keep your PvP efforts organized, and your players, they have to know where they fit into your team, right? You have roles, you have rally hive players, rally joiners, spotters, you have porter players, you have all of this. You have to keep it organized. Okay, we still have Wonky. Did you have to leave because you had some kids to take care of? That's okay. I'm just looking at a few of the questions, and the event might be dragging a bit on. I don't know, but we have one more topic left. I'm just watching some of the questions. Whoop, you can help me watch those. There's some questions related to builds. We're not going to get into building keeps, I think, in this event. That's for another event. I think it's a good question here, Whoop. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on it. In a battlefield setting and the enemy is running low on big troops for rallies, is it a good idea to take rallies with minimal reinforcements and get almost equal exchanges, trading small defensive troops for enemy bullets? I think it depends, maybe, Whoop.
I mean, yeah. If whatever the attack is creating positive exchange for your team, in like All Stars or Chalans, you don't necessarily have to have a positive exchange all the time. You just need it against the right team, like the fourth place team can beat you, but you still score, and their score is irrelevant. Like, so there's situations for that where you just have to think through the strategy, and a lot of that is probably best solved on like a voice chat with your team, kind of debriefing them on your mindset. Like, this is why we're going to do the things that we're going to do to make sure everyone understands the philosophy of it. In All Stars, people will just get zeroed and full heal a million times to make finals or whatever. That's a different animal. So
Yeah, that's a good point, Whoop. I think that's the same for us. Usually, I mean, early battlefield, you should probably avoid more rallies if you are a bit squishy as a keep, because early battlefield there's going to be larger rallies with more troops in them, and as you go, as somebody pointed out, the troops dwindle and the rallies get smaller, and then you can kind of, based on what keeps you have and what you do on the voice, you can say that now you can take this rally because now the rallies are getting weaker, they have less troops, we can have more time to reinforce keeps because the rallies are getting less frequent and all of this. I think these are all tactics you just have to figure out as a team. Whoop. I mean, surely you do the same.
I'll elaborate a little bit when I describe kind of like the growth of keeps from like ghosting keep, trap keep, like defending keep. We work that eventually especially when you go from like a 5B and now you're like an 8B or something like that. Our goal is to rally early and often and reverse that process. So like you're a defendable keep, but then we rallied so much you went from 8B to 4B. Now you're like, if you ghost your bullets, now you're a trap keep. Your trap is dead. Now you're a fully ghosting keep. Like in Battlefield, we try to reverse the growth in terms of the strategy.
What do you mean specifically? Yeah, what do you mean specifically? If you choose rally targets, you will choose maybe some firepower targets? No.
We enter Battlefield you enter Battlefield as an 8B keep, and then your setter starts joining rallies. You're just joining them all, and you're either winning or losing those rallies. And eventually, your troops are dying. So now you started as an 8B. Now you're a 5B. You can ghost at 5B, like the majority of your marches. So you haven't healed yet, but now as a 5B, all of your high tiers probably are dead because you rallied them out, and now you can ghost and heal bullets from that point. And even if you take a rally, what are you going to give up? Like 700 million points? Irrelevant, right? And so we want to get people into a stage where they're ghosting and only healing bullets as quickly as possible, rather than like, hey, I healed a bullet and you're a 7.5B and then you get one tapped and give up 7B. We'd rather you join the rallies, whittle your high tier troops down until you get so small that you can ghost again, and then just heal bullets. That way you don't give up points. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I think it makes perfect sense. That's much the same we do. At least we try to do, of course, because sometimes we have always difficulties with some players, maybe not always, that are in on the strategy we are doing. And as you say, at least with players not on voice, that's always a lot more difficult, I think. So I think, as you say, getting players to join voice during Battlefield is such a game changer as opposed to trying to, talk with players to text chat, because it's really too slow and it doesn't really work. So, and I think, as you say, or even if players want to join voice chat and not talk, that's better than not joining voice at all, I guess. So, yeah, that's a point too, because you can kind of relate stuff a lot quicker in voice, of course, and then you can on text. At least if there's a high speed battlefield. So yeah, and I see that our time. We should probably wrap this event up in 10 minutes or so. I see we are dragging on a little bit, and we have a topic left. I'm not sure how much we're going to get into it, Whoop, but what generals and gear to use and what buffs works and all of this stuff. We have limited time, and I was hoping we also could take some questions from the audience at the end here. So I'm not sure how much time we have to get in. We have to get into those details because first of all, I think they are highly, discussed topics. Some of them, what generals buffs works in what situations and all of this. I just don't think we have time for it. Maybe it's an event in itself. Maybe. What do you think, Whoop, and the rest of you?
Yeah, I would agree. Like generals and gear is probably its own topic. Like we could talk about that forever, like combinations and stuff like that. You want to know the basic, right? Like the leading the army to attack generals don't work on reinforcing. But somebody in your alliance knows this stuff.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
talk in your alliance to get educated on.
Yeah. I think so. Or ask in the C5 Discord, or get your compass adjusted from asking questions, because that's a big topic, and that might be, I think, an event by itself, because lately there has been a few videos, and we're not going to discuss this event, but Derek has released some videos. Red Evony has released something with regards to what buffs works and not. So I think it should be its own topic, I guess. And maybe we should take some questions, unless I think before we take questions, me and Whoop has been talking a lot. I don't know, Tickle, are you still on? X-Wing, are you on? Sai, do you have anything to add to stuff we discussed recently?
I'm back.
I'm still on too. I guess
Yeah.
the one thing I want to make sure that people understand is that you need to communicate with your team, because what one team does will not work for the next team. It's very dependent on the situation. So know your team's capabilities, know the team against you, and know your players, because that will determine how you reinforce.
Yes, absolutely, Tickle. I think that's a very good point. You have to adjust as a team. If you're just starting out doing PvP and battlefields, it's a total different situation than if you are a 300 bill alliance with, a lot of experience. It's completely different strategies, I guess, if you enter into PvP battles. Surely a good point. Any other rest of you guys want to have some last words before we maybe take some questions from the audience?
I've got
Yeah.
one. Go ahead, Si.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
For me, the most important thing you can do for your development is read your reports, learn how to read your reports. You can take everyone's advice, but you need to see how it works in practice and understand what's happening. So if you're like a newer alliance, or maybe if you're competing at a lower level than some of the people in this call, or the ones that you listen to all the time, set some time up after your battles or sometime during the week with your alliance and look over reports and try to understand what's happening, why certain people lose certain troops, or so that everyone understands how important buffs are and debuffs are, and the different layer sizes and all of that. And if you guys as a whole have questions, definitely reach out to the community in these discords, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that will help.
Yes, it's a good point, absolutely. And as those who are attending this event, please make note of the big work that Anya and her team are doing on the library section in C5. There's a lot of good information there that you can look up yourself to figure stuff out, or you can ask in some of the channels. Mostly you get sane answers. Sometimes you get trolled, but I think the C5 community is pretty good. It's safe to ask questions there, I think. So please do that. I think the buff part we just have to. We don't have time to get into it because I know as soon as we get into buffs, debuffs, and what works and that don't, I think time will just go too fast. So I think from the audience, as Anya mentioned earlier, we should be taking some questions, and preferably if you raise your hand, we can do some questions on stage. We still have most of us in here and should be able to answer it as long as it's maybe not about buffs or debuffs. Make it about what we have discussed so far in this event. I'm not sure if I'm seeing hands. Anya, if you still are in the audience, help me.
I see no Dom has great plans.
Yeah, just bring him on stage, guys. If you see somebody have hands raised, I'm not sure how I'll pull them in. Okay, here we. Hey, more Dome. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I'm More Dome. I'm on server 755. I'm a K41. So there was a topic about having preset range. Just as I'm trying to understand like how to structure my marches for the reinforcements. Like, do I go top heavy? Do I do T15s? If I'm sending siege. So I'm taking away the filler reins. I understand that those are just layers, and we'll also take away the siege because you said T15 with siege is great. But the rest of the marches, like, how are you structuring the marches? Like, is it like 25% top tier, 50% top tier? Like, how are you structuring them?
Okay, I see. Your question is related to what type of tires and numbers you have in your different marches, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I think it was mentioned, at least briefly, that and everybody in the same team should have approximately the same type of marches. Guys, anybody if you wanna quickly go into how to make your marches? I mean, there's a lot of difference between, and I think also here it comes into play how big your alliance is, what buffs you have, and all of this. But it's maybe difficult to say something concrete, but maybe some of you guys can say how you do it in your team. I mean, not by decimal point, but in general.
I usually go with my archer marches. Just if it's for rain or if it's for attacking, I just follow the same presets. Because frankly,
Yeah, but
I am low on these. But
yeah,
I usually
and
do it. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that usually my top archer, which is my for archers and calves, I follow this preset, which is 10%, then 15%, and then the third layer is the highest one, which is like 65. For ground and siege,
Yeah.
I do 45, 45, and then rest everything. So 45%, 45%.
Yes, and I think, and I hope both X-Wing, Tickle, Wonky, and the rest can arrest me here, but for melee marches, I mean, that's your ground and cav, they should usually be top heavy, meaning if you have T14, T15, they should be more heavy in the top than in the bottom, and for archers, you should probably have more T12 in the march, T13s in the march than the higher tires. And then for siege, usually you do a big amount of T13 siege. Maybe some of you other guys can pitch in some general ideas here.
So I'll describe a practice where I'm talking about like your 6B style keep. A good when you're making your mixed march, a good practice for that is while you're in server, whatever, you make your 4 or 5 main presets, ground, cav, archer, siege. Make those, ghost them, see what you have left, and then create your preset with your remaining troops. Because if you just theoretically make it, what'll end up happening if you don't have a bunch of troops, your reinforcing march, when you send it out first, will then ruin your primary presets because it pulls troops out of those. So it's a good practice to ghost your primary marches first, then create your mixed march free reign preset if you're low on troops.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did it answer your question?
Yeah, no, it did. What I'm hearing is for the siege, I heard the 45-45. I like that. I on a different C5 event, you mentioned that what was it, T12 are just not good to use T12 siege. So I think was that 14 and 13 you were saying for 45-45?
Yeah, usually siege marches, big siege, are usually heavy on T13s. I mean, the thing is that usually I don't think there's a perfect march, but I think as a rally team or as a team, you should try to have about the same, percentages of tires in each of the ground archers, cavs, and big siege marches. I think maybe you should. You can ask the question later also in the C5 Discord, because there are some out there, some suggestions for layers and have you layer your marches. I think it depends if you're a big or a small team also. So
Okay.
but yeah.
And my last question is: are you doing 10,000 instead of 1,000 at that point for reinforcement? Would you like recommend?
Also, how much fill you have in your march. Like if you set up an archer march, how much of the other tires should you have in that march? I think this is dependent on your march size and your overall size. Because if you're a bigger keep with a bigger march size, more fill reigns will always be better than less fill reigns. But then again, if it's a rally or a solo, I mean, there's a few things there. So you have to consider your own keep level and if you whether or not you're going to go with 2k fill in your march, or if you're going to go with 5k in your fill march or in your main PvP march. I think that depends a bit on your build and your march size. Maybe some K44s can answer that. X-Wing, if you're here, or Tickle.
Yeah.
It depends.
Go ahead, Tickle.
Go ahead, X-Wing. I like, for my K44, I like to use 10,000 layers, but I use it in building solo a lot, so it makes a difference. But if it's just for a rally, you could argue 1,000 as well. And my march size is around 8 million.
Yeah, because in a rally, the field range will not make that much of a difference if you're rallying a big keep, right?
Right, but I'm not going to make a separate preset for it.
Yeah, of course, you can't make a different preset for it. And as you say, Tickle, if you go solo into maybe reinforcing a building, if you have 10k layers there, and you are facing an enemy that has the same march as you, and the correct counter march and the same buffs, if he has 2k fill range and you have 10k, you will win that battle. That's basically how it works, right?
In a nutshell, yeah.
In a nutshell, yeah. Simplified, of course. But yeah. And X-Wing, you also had something to add?
Yeah, it gets a bit theoretical. There's no perfect answer, but in rallies in general, if you're the attacker, you'll generally have more players and more layers in the rally than on defense, because they are reacting and you are, counting down and everyone's ready, and not everybody reinforces every time. So in those cases, the smaller layers aren't as, or the going with big layers doesn't really help you as much because you're still going to get more turns. On defense, though, I prefer to go with 25k layers. Granted, I have like an 8.5 million march size. So, and that's because of the same reason, right? Like I want my reinforcement march to survive the layer attacks. Theoretically, that's how it should work out. But whether or not your big siege continues to attack all the way down to T1 reinforcing siege before it attacks the main keeps T14 or T13 or works its way from the top down, it's hard to prove that because usually you either clear the siege or you don't, and you get stuffed at the high tiers. In general, though, I definitely go with higher layers in reinforcement marches than you do in your attacking marches.
Yeah, makes sense, and I think as always in Evony, there's not one simple answer to any question. As you say, it will highly depend on how much troops you are able to march and what your buffs are versus what you're getting attacked against. Because I mean, if you are outmatched in buffs by 1 to 2, probably the fill range is not gonna make too much difference. So yeah, it's dependent, I guess, on a few things. Yeah, I see time is running away from us. We are waffling as usual. Is there any more questions from the audience? Is there any hands? Trying to see if there is. Feel free to come and ask a question about reinforcements. I'm sure.
Hello,
Hello, welcome.
Dr. Malley, Server 185, Keep 45. So I have a general question when making this reinforcement that Whoop was talking about in the chat with the 400k layers and all that of your top tier down until the march is filled. So what generals would you put in there for, like you put archer and a ground general? Like what's the combo that you would recommend? And also I have a much smaller alliance aside from the two Keep 45s. So like they don't have like, you can't just say the best general to have because they barely have the best generals for your attacking presets. So do they go with the reinforcement generals or what?
So your best unqualified generals, so like leading the army, whichever two are compatible, don't overly fixate on the generals. The generals, in terms of what they're bringing to the table, are the smallest thing in the entire equation. The generals don't matter that much. So just find two generals that are unqualified and compatible, and then gear them up and with that, whatever refines, you can make it mixed. Use whatever spare gear you have. Find a dragon or a spirit beast that is kind of unqualified. And the only thing that you might want to consider in terms of gear is if you're only going to have this one reinforcing march, putting siege range ring or bracer on it, because that will determine the effectiveness of the siege part of your reinforcing march. But beyond that, don't fixate on which general are trying to have the perfect set. It really is so small of a difference as to not be worth worrying about. I promise.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I just add?
Excellent.
You can
Thank you,
reinforce
yeah.
without a general if you need to. Having reinforcements
What did
without
we-
a general is still better than having no reinforcements.
Yeah, so in case maybe X-Wing, if you maybe most of your marches are out or you're reinforcing other keeps, you might still send a preset without generals. That's better, right? And not sending anything.
Yeah. If you hear someone say, "I got a siege rally incoming," and then someone else replies, "Sorry, my siege is out," you can still send a siege march. Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, but just without the generals. Yeah, that's a good point, I think. Is it any other questions, or did anybody
Especially
want to? Yeah,
especially
Oops.
against a cav rally, sending archer reinforcements, even if you don't have generals in it, are wildly effective. Still very, very effective.
Yeah. I guess this is a kind of a melody throughout this event that if you don't have the right generals in the march, or you don't have the correct march, it's better to send anything than not sending anything at all. That's I hear that a lot. So I mean, sometimes you're just empty of marches, right? You need to send something. So do we have any more hands raised, guys? Did you notice anybody? I know we have been. Oh, this event has been going on for over 2 hours.
One thing we didn't talk about that I'll just say broadly, as a team, especially if you're like, oh man, I want to be one of those keeps that gets reinforced, like you feel like you're at, make sure you have an embassy that can support it. If you can only hold 15 million reams, you're not going to get reinforced because everyone's just going to get bounced out. So if this topic is of interest to you, work on your embassy because it's what allows people in.
Yeah, and I think Whoop, that's a good point because we haven't touched on the embassy size of your keep, and I think obviously this is going to be a lot different whether you are in Traloon's All Stars or whether you are in a regular battlefield with maybe lower players. I think it's correct to say that if you are going to build a keep that's going to be competitive in like elite all stars or things around there, you should probably have embassy size that are at least, I guess, 30 million or more, rather, right? I'm not sure how you guys experience embassy sizes in your kind of alliances.
Yeah, embassy size is part of our pre-reign chart. Like if your embassy is too small, you don't get pre-reign. Like the way we evaluate a sufficient embassy size is what size rallies do we expect? Your embassy needs to be half that. If we're going to see 80 million rallies, you need 40 million embassy size. Otherwise, our 18 million reams aren't going to do anything against 80 million rallies. So that's just the broad goals we try to set. 50% of the expected rally size should be your embassy size.
Yeah, that's a great point because that will scale for different teams for sure. So whether it's 15 million or if it's 50 million or if it's 30 million, that will depend. So 50% of the marches you expect to get hit with. Yeah, that's a great tip, I think. And also, I think, as you mentioned earlier, Vup, inspect your reports after a battlefield as a player and see. I mean, do you always get filled when you ask for reins, right? That's the typical thing. I would say that, okay, I need to work on my embassy size because people are getting bounced. I'm getting more reins than I actually can keep. Then, okay, then you have to work on your embassy size. You know, you have to take these clues. I mean, if you always get just half your embassy size for reins, yeah, then you don't have to worry about your embassy size, I think. So, yeah.
I thought what X-Wing and Tickle said are the number 1 and 1A takeaways. Read the reports, see what's going on. They are the truth. Everything else is that we're talking about is theoretical. The reports will tell you what's actually happening, and good team organization and communication. If you have those two things going for you, you're in really good shape.
Yeah, absolutely, and work with your team players, right? After a battlefield, maybe do a debrief, talk with some of your players that, hey, I think you need to work a little bit on your siege debuffs. You have to work a little bit on your cav buffs or whatever it is. Try and help to try and help your team. Read maybe some of the reports on other keeps. and try to, I think the main point is that you, as a PvP team, you have to have a progress, right? You start somewhere and then you want to end up someplace else. So I think as a team you have to have lateral growth in your alliance. Everybody has to kind of improve. Those are, in your battlefield team, everybody has to improve. I mean, you have smaller players, bigger players, but everybody improves in a certain way, right? Whether it's with buffs or debuffs or troop layering or fill raining or whatever it is, someplace everybody has to improve and people need to work on their weaknesses versus strength, right? So
Yep. The one thing that helped with PPK growth and just how all of us learned to play is, especially when you go up against a team that is better than you, like they just whoop the crap out of you. I mean, really read like when you rally them, see what they are doing. What are their reinforcing marches look like? Learn, when somebody beats you, figure out what they did and copy it.
yes, absolutely. Learn from players that are really skilled, and as you say, you should study your losses more than your wins. Forget about the wins, I think. Study your losses. I think that's where you're going to make improvements from your reports. And the last tip, I think, if you are on Discord and you're active there, and sometimes you can get players to maybe join your battlefield to evaluate you. We've done that. I've had players in our alliance joining our battlefield on voice. It's been a great help sometimes to get somebody from outside your alliance to join a battlefield or two to, they might better see what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, what do you need to work on. I think this is also can be a good thing if you get somebody to maybe join you or if fill your keep or play a small alt in a battlefield, to join you and see whether or not you are on the right track or not. I don't know if you guys have done anything like that before, having other players join you from other servers or other continents.
Baby Bear, she's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a good idea, to maybe you can ask somebody to, hey, you're a super good rally player, you're a super good filler. Can you join our alliance for BOC maybe one time to help us a bit on the way? That's a great way, and I know VIG has been super great at that. I know they have had players in many alliances helping them with their PvP efforts. So that's also a tip for some players. We are waffling on a bit, and I think we should maybe wrap up the event. Is there any more hands in the air? Guys, have you seen any hands?
There are not hands, but I do see a question repeated, which I wanted to kind of address slightly,
Sure.
which people are talking about. I know we are not going to be talking much in depth on buffs and debuffs, but I just wanted to call out one thing, that there is no benchmark for what is considered as a good buff, because the fight is between two players. Now, whether it's in a rally or whether it's in reigns, it's still two players. I mean, one keep versus another keep. You might have reinforcements and you might have rally joiners. Against player who has 1800 buffs, a keep who has, let's say, 1600 buffs, that's good buffs because you're almost close to that. Against a keep that has 5000 buffs, even 2500 buffs are not even close. So that's bad buffs. So when people are asking question, what is a good buff? I would say that it depends on the average buffed player that you're facing. I went into All Stars, I got smacked left and right with 4.8k rallies, and I got zeroed in one shot. So, and I don't consider my buffs as bad, but they were nowhere enough good for All Star majors. So that's what you have to keep in mind, because I usually face opponents which are like 3.5k, So my 2.5k buffs hold fairly good against that. But against 5k buffs, yeah, that's nowhere near. I hope that at least answers some of the questions that people have, that what are good buffs. And it boils down to the question of reading reports, understanding the fact that Evony is a turn-based game. I have seen way too many people lose their temper and not believing that's a turn-based game and how it works, etc. Once you get better in that, you will understand that what kind of buffs, rally you can take. And that's why reading scout reports, I scout enormously in battlefields, in SVS, to try and get an idea of how much buffs, because scout reports don't give you attacking buffs, it gives their defending buffs, but you can get an idea that, okay, if their defending buffs are like this, how much would their attacking buffs would be. So I just wanted to address that. I know we are not touching deep dive on it, but hopefully it helps some people understand that against a smaller player keep, smaller buffed player, small buffs are good buffs. Against a high player buffs, small buffs are not good buffs. It's just kind of like not kind of like, it is mathematics. Sorry.
Absolutely, Sai. I think that's actually a great point you have. Without getting more in depth into it, that what good buffs are. Absolutely, that will depend what you are usually facing. That's for sure. I mean, if you face if you face 2.5k archer rallies in battlefield, that's what you mostly face, and you have 2.2k defensive buffs. You have pretty decent buffs against that little. It's the difference, right, between what you are facing and what you have, because you can't be a K38 free-to-play player and expect to defend against a K44 with 4.5k buffs. That's just not happening. So you have to be realistic. It's the buff gap, I think. That's what you're saying, Sai. I mean, both for the debuffs and the buffs, it's the gap that you usually face. I mean, if your team faces 4 times what your team have, okay, then your team have bad buffs, I would say. But if your team faces like maybe a couple of hundred over, a couple of hundred under, then you are in that range, right? You have okay buffs. So I think it's a great point without getting more into depth of it.
Yeah. The thing about buffs is that
I also.
Sorry. Go ahead, Hope.
No, go ahead, Sai.
Oh, I was just gonna say that another, just on the same buff topic, is on the higher end of the spectrum, the buff sizes and march sizes are so extreme that it can easily even break through reigns and everything. And people would get confused and they would have lots of questions that reigns are not working. They might have, conspiracy theories that, oh, everything is broken, things like that, blah, blah, blah. But it's again comes down to reading the reports, because buffs and march size plays a huge role in all of these things. So use the community and have an open mind when getting answers, because if you're just coming to justify your own point, nobody would be able to explain anything.
And if I were to tie the entire topic together, I think that the key to playing well, your alliance playing well, is you have to realize Evony is a team sport. Everyone typically over focuses on themselves and like, what's my buffs, but the quicker you realize that it's a team sport and you play as a team, the more success that you will have. Like, everyone understands the mechanics of rallying, and how effective it is and how great it is on attack. Reinforcement is the defensive version of rallying. It is the counter to the rally. It's negative, or it's opposite. And so if you want to be, as a team, very good at it. Just like you're good at rallying, you want to be good at reinforcing too.
Yep, 100% agree.
Absolutely, Whoopin. I think with that, I think we should call the event at an end. Thank you, everybody in the panel, for taking your time off on a Sunday evening, at least for some of us, to to do this event. I'm very grateful for you that have taken your time. And I would also like to, as always, send a big thank you to Anya and her team for hosting so many good events on C5 Discord. I hope audience will use C5 Discord or other Discords to ask questions and get your knowledge about the game on par. And I think with that, guys, we're ending the event. And thank you for everybody attending. Thank you for all the questions and those who have been in voice with us discussing reinforcements. And hopefully sometime we can make another event. I feel like buffs, debuffs, and generals and gears might be an event that should come up at some point. Any closing thoughts, guys?
Thanks for hosting, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
Excellent, guys.
It's really
Thank
great.
you. Yeah, thank you so much. And with that, I think we'll end the event. And some of us, you can speak with us in the C5 Discord if you want to ask questions. If we're there, just go ahead. We'll answer. And with that, I'll say good evening to those in Europe at least, and have a good week coming up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.